This analogy of protein quality is courtesy of Dr. Christensen, who also teaches this class. So if you look at this chart here, let's say you're going to build some kind of structure. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to build something, but it takes quite a few tools to be able to do it and materials. So let's say the red here is showing us our blueprint. So we've got 2x4s, some sheetrock, some shingles, and some nails. We're going to build just a very basic structure. And we've got two suppliers to choose from. So we've got supplier A, who's in the blue, and supplier B, who's in the black. So you can see the supplier A looks like the supplier A has about what we need, the ratios of what we need of each of those particular supplies. If you look at supplier B, they've got a lot of sheetrock and shingles, but hardly any 2x4s and even less nails. Without nails and 2x4s, you don't really have a structure to put the sheetrock or the shingles on. So the idea is that this idea is that we would probably choose, I would think you would choose supplier A, because supplier A really meets the needs of what we need for our blueprint. Well, you can think about our need for food in the same way. So these are some amino acids, and what you can see is that we have need for these in our diet at certain ratios. And shown here gives you a sense of kind of what that ratio might look like relative to each other. And if we have different foods here. So we've got meat that looks like that's in the blue, and then we've got grain that's in the black. And what you can see is that grain really has a lot of leucine and methionine, but very little lysine and tryptophan. Whereas when you look at the meat, it really meets the ratios that we need in our body much more closely than does the grain. So hopefully you can see that when we talk about protein quality, we really are talking about what is that amino acid sequence, what kinds of amino acids would we be getting by consuming that food, and talking about its digestibility, so the amino acid pattern and digestibility. So you might guess that the highest quality are animal sources. So anything like meats or dairy foods are really high quality protein sources, meaning that they give us the amino acids in the ratios that our body needs. Mid-range would be things like legumes, and then lower quality would be grain. And hopefully that makes sense what we just saw on the last slide of thinking about, get to the last slide here, thinking about that grains have a lot higher amino acids than meat, and some of them, but then they also are limiting in other amino acids, meaning that we would have to consume a lot more grains in order to reach what we need. Now this gets into the idea of, what about people who are vegetarian or vegan? Well, they can choose to complement their proteins, and you can learn more about complementary proteins in the book, thinking about what kinds of things can you combine in order to ensure that a person is going to get all of the essential amino acids that they need in the ratios they need. And it's very highly possible. We really do see that most people in the United States are able to meet their protein needs, even if they choose a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle. So here's another example showing you amino acid patterns and real protein food sources. So here we've got, well, some protein food sources and then some others that are grain. So here we've got corn tortillas, black beans, and beef. All of these contain protein, and you can see here's the distribution of some of the amino acids. Just like we talked about before, the grains really are limiting in some amino acids. In this case, we see that it's limiting in lysine. But we can see that black beans and beef are much better, and you can see that overall the best one is beef. It has the most of the amino acids in amino acid pattern in a high enough amount that we need to have in our diet. But like I said, ultimately you can get enough protein even if you don't consume animal products in your diet, but just to be aware that there are differences within protein quality within foods, and that it's necessary for us to make sure that we get all the amino acids in the right patterns within our diet so that we can maintain functions that we need to and use proteins in a way that allows us to keep continually running our cells in a healthy manner. If you have further questions about protein quality, let me or the TAs know.